She once stepped onto the screen like a breath of forbidden air, blonde, distant, and impossibly magnetic. Kim Basinger was not just beautiful, she was untouchable. A fantasy you could never quite hold, and a tragedy you somehow already felt. Today, if you walk past her, you might not realize who she once was. The face that defined sensuality in the 1982nd now avoids the camera. The actress who won an Oscar and turned down blockbusters lives in near seclusion, and the woman who seemed to have the world at her feet has spent decades quietly retreating from it. But what if that disappearance was never a fall from grace? What if it was an escape? This is the haunting contradiction at the heart of Kim Basinger's story. How can someone be both iconic and invisible? How does a woman become the symbol of desire, only to vanish when she could have cashed in forever? The answer lies somewhere between anxiety and rebellion, between fame and fear, between the girl who grew up in Georgia with a stutter and the Hollywood siren who whispered her way into cinematic history. This is not a story about loss. It is a story about retreat, about choosing silence over noise, depth over spotlight. And in the flickering contrast between then and now, Kim Basinger may just be one of the most misunderstood icons of her time. Camilla Ann Basinger was born on the 8th of December, 1953, in Athens, Georgia. She was not the kind of child who seemed destined for stardom. In fact, she could barely speak in public. Kim struggled with a debilitating stutter, one that made even the smallest classroom presentation a moment of panic. Yet from an early age, she was drawn to the stage. It was as if the very thing that terrified her also called to her. Her father was a big band musician, and her mother had been a model and actress. The tension between introversion and exposure was stitched into her DNA. When Kim began modeling in her late teens, she found herself in front of cameras not because she loved it, but because it offered structure and control. Modeling gave her something acting would later challenge: predictability. Yet it was that same camera that first recognized her ethereal presence. She was soon signed by Ford Models and became a commercial sensation in New York, earning thousands of dollars a day. But Kim was never just a pretty face. She was restless. The modeling world, with its rigid poses and silent expressions, felt too small. In the late 1970s, Kim left New York and moved to Los Angeles. There, she studied acting with Milton Katselas and slowly began breaking into television. Her early appearances on shows like Macmillan and Wife and Charlie's Angels hinted at her screen charisma, but it was her role in the 1981 television remake of From Here to Eternity that caught the industry's attention. Hollywood took notice of her unique combination of vulnerability and sensuality. She could be both Marilyn Monroe and Grace Kelly, yet she was not trying to imitate anyone. She was different. Then came 1983. Kim Basinger stepped into the role of Domino Patachi in Never Say Never Again opposite Sean Connery. It was not just a Bond role. It was a debut into global iconography. Suddenly, Kim was not just a rising actress. She was a symbol, a muse, a blonde mystery with alabaster skin and distant eyes. She was everywhere and yet somehow unreachable. The media loved to describe her as aloof, even icy, but her performances revealed something else: an aching softness, a quiet plea for safety. In 1986, 9.5 weeks pushed her even deeper into the public imagination. The film was controversial, erotic, and polarizing. Kim's performance was often misunderstood, framed as submissive or one-dimensional. But if you watch closely, you see something far more complex. Her character is constantly negotiating control, constantly balancing exposure and privacy. It mirrored Kim's real life more than most people knew. The role both elevated her and trapped her. Critics dismissed her as a sex symbol. Audiences projected their fantasies onto her. Directors typecast her. And through it all, Kim remained elusive. Unlike many of her peers, she avoided the press. She rarely smiled in interviews. She never chased talk show charm or award season politics. Her silence became part of her allure. In 1989, she took on the role of Vicky Vale in Tim Burton's Batman. It was the biggest commercial film of her career, and for many fans, it was their first introduction to her. Yet even in the world of capes and chaos, Kim brought fragility to the screen. She did not overpower scenes. She haunted them. That same year, she turned down major offers, including the female lead in Basic Instinct. She was not interested in repeating herself. She wanted more. Then came 1997, L.A. Confidential. The role of Lynn Bracken was everything Kim had been building toward. Vulnerable, strong, wounded, controlled. For her performance, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. It should have been the peak, the moment she stepped fully into Hollywood royalty. But what followed was not celebration. It was silence. The momentum she had worked so hard to build suddenly vanished. Offers dried up. Her name slipped from casting wish lists. Rumors about her mental health and legal troubles began to circulate. But beneath those headlines was a deeper truth. Kim Basinger had never played the fame game. She had survived it. The shift in Kim Basinger's life did not come with a single scandal or explosive moment. It came like fog, creeping slowly until the world around her was unrecognizable. After winning the Academy Award for her role in L.A. Confidential, most actresses would have used the momentum to secure more roles, sign bigger contracts, appear on every red carpet. Kim did the opposite. She pulled back. She vanished from the noise. It was not that she stopped working completely. She still appeared in films, but the frequency changed. The energy around her changed. The urgency that once followed her like paparazzi flashbulbs faded. And part of that shift was by design. Kim Basinger had never been fully comfortable in Hollywood. She suffered from chronic anxiety and agoraphobia. Even during her most glamorous years, she often avoided crowded events, skipped premieres, and limited interviews. Fame was a costume she wore well, but never fully embraced. After her Oscar win, the pressure to stay in that role became suffocating. Then there were the personal battles. Her marriage to Alec Baldwin, which began in 1993, was intense and passionate, but also tumultuous. They were one of the most talked about couples of the 92nd. Two magnetic stars under one roof. But fame can distort even the strongest connections. Their relationship, strained by public scrutiny and personal differences, ended in a highly publicized divorce in 2002. The custody battle over their daughter, Ireland, was long and painful. During that time, Kim was often portrayed in the media as reclusive, unstable, even irrational. The headlines were brutal, but rarely accurate. Behind those stories was a woman trying to protect her child and herself from a world that had never felt safe. A woman battling a deeply misunderstood anxiety disorder. A woman who, despite her fame, found more peace in quiet than in applause. In 1993, she made a bold financial and moral decision. Kim pulled out of the film Boxing Helena, a surreal and controversial project. Citing creative disagreements, the producers sued her for breach of contract. The court ruled against her. Kim was ordered to pay over $8 million in damages. The legal battle forced her to file for bankruptcy. It was a moment that might have destroyed another actress, but Kim never responded with bitterness or public rage. She simply disappeared further from the spotlight. That disappearance was not failure. It was survival. While many stars chase reinvention with plastic surgery and PR strategies, Kim chose invisibility. She refused to become a caricature of her younger self. She did not fight aging with desperation. She let go. Her roles in the 2002 were sporadic. She appeared in The Door and the Floor alongside Jeff Bridges, a performance critics quietly praised. She starred in Cellular, Even Money, and The Burning Plane. These were not blockbusters. They were quiet stories, complex characters, They allowed Kim to act without needing to be a symbol. But the media did not follow her there. They had moved on to louder actresses, younger faces, faster scandals. Kim did not chase them. She stayed where she felt safe. Occasionally, she would appear in public, usually with her daughter. Ireland Baldwin, who grew up under the lens of a celebrity custody battle, has spoken openly about her love and admiration for her mother. Their bond, forged through hardship, remains one of the most genuine parts of Kim's life. The shift, then, was not a downfall. It was a redefinition. Kim Basinger had spent decades being what others projected onto her: a sex symbol, a siren, a fragile goddess. But beneath those labels was a woman craving authenticity, a woman who valued peace over applause. In time, the industry stopped asking where she went. They assumed she had burned out. But the truth is simpler. Kim did not disappear. She just stopped performing off-screen. Today, Kim Basinger lives a life that feels worlds apart from the woman we once saw on magazine covers and movie posters. She no longer walks red carpets or gives interviews under bright studio lights. Her name does not trend on social media. And yet, she remains unforgettable. Not because of where she is, but because of where she once took us. In recent years, Kim has become a symbol not of glamour, but of quiet resistance. She lives in California, surrounded by animals, nature, and the simplicity she once longed for during the chaos of fame. She has spoken openly about her decades-long struggle with agoraphobia, explaining how at times she could not leave her house, how the idea of walking into a grocery store felt like stepping into a battlefield. For someone whose face once lit up the biggest screens in the world, the fear of simply being seen became overwhelming. And yet, she has not let that fear define her. She has worked with animal rights organizations. She has taken care of rescue pets. She has focused on being a mother, on being present, on healing. In her few public appearances in recent years, Kim has shown the lines of time not with shame, but with grace. She does not look like the woman from 9.5 weeks, and she does not try to. There is no surgical mask of denial stretched across her face. There is softness now, a kind of honesty that only arrives when the performance ends. In 2016, she returned to the screen in The Nice Guys, playing a political fixer with icy precision. It was a small role, but a powerful one. She still had presence. She still had mystery. And in 2017, she stepped back into the blockbuster world with 50 Shades Darker, portraying Elena Lincoln. For a younger generation unfamiliar with her earlier work, it was a brief reintroduction to someone whose mystique had once shaped a decade. But Kim does not act often, not because she cannot, but because she does not need to. She chooses her peace over projects. She chooses her truth over reinvention. That is perhaps the most radical thing a Hollywood actress can do. Her daughter, Ireland, now an actress and model herself, has become one of Kim's most vocal supporters. The two share a bond that has survived fame, divorce, mental health struggles, and public scrutiny. They often appear together in candid, unfiltered social media posts. No red carpet gloss, no strategic branding, just a mother and daughter who found each other in the wreckage of celebrity. In interviews, Ireland has described her mother as incredibly strong, deeply empathetic, and fiercely private. These qualities are not always visible in the performances that made Kim famous, but they have defined her later life. She is not a forgotten star. She is a woman who stepped back on her own terms. In Hollywood, aging is treated like a crisis, especially for women. But Kim Basinger has never subscribed to those rules. She has allowed herself to fade in the way that stars do when they return to the sky, not with collapse, but with distance. She is no longer the blonde mystery in black lace. She is no longer the reluctant icon trapped by her own reflection. She is a woman who has aged without apology, who has survived without spectacle, and when she does choose to speak, to act, to be seen, it is not for attention. it is for purpose. Kim Basinger's journey defies the template we are so used to seeing in Hollywood. She did not crash spectacularly. She did not cling to youth with desperate comebacks. She did not reinvent herself through social media or seek redemption in reality television. Instead, she disappeared with intention. She aged on her own terms, and in doing so, she may have revealed more about the nature of fame than those who stayed in the spotlight ever could. Artistically, Kim aged with restraint and dignity. She did not chase relevance. She did not flood the screen with performances that tried to recapture her past. When she did act, she brought something deeper, something quieter, something earned. Her later roles are not desperate echoes of her youth. They are proof that she was never just a face. She was always a soul trying to be heard. Emotionally, her evolution is even more powerful. Living with anxiety, battling agoraphobia, navigating a brutal industry while protecting her daughter from its darkest corners, Kim chose healing over hustle. That choice came with consequences. Fewer headlines, fewer roles, less recognition, but it also brought her peace. And perhaps that is the success story we should talk about more often. Publicly, she may seem absent, but absence is not the same as irrelevance. In fact, her silence has become a kind of presence. When we look back at her films, they shimmer with a longing we did not understand at the time. That whisper in her voice, that glassy hesitation in her gaze. It was not performance, it was truth. And now we know, what does Kim Basinger's story tell us about Hollywood? That beauty is not protection. That silence is not weakness. That walking away is sometimes the bravest act of all. In an industry that often devours its own, Kim refused to be consumed. She did not let the machine shape her into a permanent product. She broke free. She may have paid for that freedom and lost roles and faded fame, but what she gained cannot be measured in awards or box office numbers. She became herself. So the question we ask is not just whether she aged well. The question is whether we ever truly saw her at all. Maybe we were too distracted by the surface, too in love with the image, too caught up in the illusion. Maybe now, with distance, we can appreciate the full arc, the quiet rebellion, the unapologetic retreat. Do we prefer her then or now? The truth is, they are not separate people. The woman in the shadows of LA Confidential and the woman walking her rescue dog in Malibu are the same. One needed the spotlight to be seen. The other learned to live without it. There is a scene in LA Confidential where Kim Basinger's character, Lynn Bracken, stands in a dimly lit room, her face half in shadow, her voice barely above a whisper. She is the kind of woman who carries secrets in her silence, the kind of woman you never fully understand but never forget. That moment, brief and quiet, is Kim Basinger in essence. Not loud, not obvious, but unforgettable. Time has changed her face. The years have softened the sharp glamour that once defined her. But behind those changes is a woman who never stopped being real. Kim Basinger never traded her soul for permanence. She let herself disappear, not because she had nothing left to give, but because she had already given too much. And yet, in the quiet of her retreat, she left behind echoes. A glance in a black and white photograph. A scene from a film that plays late at night when you cannot sleep. A memory of a voice that trembled but never broke. For those who grew up watching her, Kim remains a phantom stitched into the fabric of cinematic memory. Not just for the roles she played, but for the feeling she left behind. A sense of longing, of fragility wrapped in strength, of a woman trying to be seen without being consumed. Time may change everything. The spotlight moves. The cameras forget. But in the reels of memory, in the quiet hours when old films flicker across the screen, Kim Basinger still appears. Not as a fallen star, not as a forgotten name, but as a symbol of something rare in Hollywood: dignity, mystery, escape. We do not need to see her to remember her. She is already there, waiting in the shadows, etched into the silver frame. Forever still, forever silent, forever hers.